Jesus Christ.
Okay.
To our absent overseer Cardinal Dr. Barbara Jackman, to Evangelist Barnes,
Bless you.
to Associate Pastor Reeves, Associate Pastor Henry, Deacon Dave, I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I want to go to 1 Peter chapter 4, starting at verse 10. And it reads, as every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If any man speak, let him speak the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do it as the ability which God gives, that God in all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ, whom we praise and dominion forever and ever. My title, Not Using Your Gifts, Steals Life in God's Glory. One of the things that I want to discuss, and I have begun to look at, is how we sit on our gifts. Not even just the world, but I want to exactly talk about the saints of God. Because what happens is when we don't use the gifts that God has given us, there's a way that God gave you these gifts to be utilized, that it brings Him glory, but it also helps the body of Christ. So when He gives you these gifts are not meant for you to hold to yourself. And also understand that these gifts are different. One of the problems sometimes we have is we get this spirit of copycat. And the reason we get that spirit is because we think, if I saw this person do it this way, this is what I should do. But I want to look at some of those things today. As we look at one of the things that God has always did, God has always used skilled, talented people. And He's done this even when He was building the temples or whatever He has done, even from the beginning. Let's go to Exodus 31. And I will begin at chapter 3. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and understanding, and the knowledge and the manner of workmanship, to devise cunning works, to work in gold and silver and brass, and in the cutting of stones, to set them in carving of timber, to work in all manner of workmanship. This is talking about the workmen. As we begin to see right here, God is beginning to use talented and skilled people. He gave them a spirit of wisdom. And this wisdom, the spirit, to be able to do the things that He wants. When you look at the Old Testament, you will see when God was building things, He wanted some of the greatest people to do it, and He put this in them. The problem I think that happens today in ministry is the same people that have the Spirit of God in them never get a chance to understand the greatness that is in them because they never step out of their comfort zone and they never begin to utilize the skills and talents that God has. I believe that many times that we live in a different time. We live in a time where we have so many creative abilities that people sit there. I never thought in my life that I would want to write a book. I never thought in my life that I would want to say, can I produce a film? But the only time you begin to do that is when you step out of your zone. Many times we have people who have great gifts. I watch some of the gifts that people have, like certain people who have a nourishing spirit. I looked at how our pastor reads, as she was devoted to her mother. And a lot of times people will look at somebody be devoted to somebody and they will never know that that's such a gift. Because there's a lot of people that don't care about their parents like that. There's a lot of people that won't spend those times. I even see my wife, how she is there for her mother. And you know, you look at these things, especially when you work in environments and you see older women and they're sitting there and they don't have anyone to care about them. They don't have no one to nourish them. And a lot of times we think that it's just easy. But the truth of the matter is you need a nourishing spirit. You have to be there when a person, even if that person may not even recognize you anymore. So that's the gift of God that we never take for granted. We never take, look at it and just don't pay attention to because it is especially important. But those are the gifts that some people have. Some people may have the gift to go out and build things or work or to do other skills. But they're all important. And this was even used in the gospel. When we look at how Paul used Peter, and then God used Paul and he used Peter. He did not use them the same way. Let's look at that. Let's go to Galatians 2, verse 8. And it says, "For he who wrote effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me towards the Gentiles." Does anyone have a different verse? Let me hear what you have.
It says, "For the same God who worked through Peter as the apostle to the Jews also worked through me as the apostle to the Gentiles."
As we see, there were two different people. At one point, at first God was using Peter with the Gentiles, and we find out Peter began to move away from them. And sometimes that's why God calls one person to one group, and he calls another person to a different group. And I have to learn that, especially as a pastor. Because sometimes as a pastor, when you get up to speak and you go into certain environments, you think that you're supposed to be like a certain pastor. But that's not what God called you to. I look at the background. Let's take from like one church when you had a pastor, his family, they all grew up and everybody went to church. Everybody had a certain way. So God would use that pastor in this way. Another type of pastor he would use, just as Paul is, to go and speak maybe to the street people. And the reason it is because they're both needed, they both have their value, but what God is using them is for two different purposes. What happens a lot is when we get a copycat spirit and try to be like this one, but God didn't call you to be like that one. He called you to be yourself because we serve a personal God. No. While yes, we have a God of greatness, that's why when you pick up the scriptures and someone is ministering, you can all hear the same word come out, but it can minister to each one of us in a different way. Because God uses his spirit to minister to the needs of each one of us individually. That's why he sends each one of us out to do certain things. All of us don't have, that's why it's important to know why he created a body. Because no one has all the gifts. We all bring something to the table. God intended it to be that way. But when we don't use our gifts, we begin to hinder the body, and we also hinder ourselves because we don't grow and find out what God has for us. But all the works that we do are important, regardless if it goes one way, or he's using you over here, or he's using you over there. Let's look at that. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 12. That's what we do. And I'm going to start at chapter 12, starting at chapter 5. No, not fact, starting at chapter 4. Verse 4. Now, there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. There are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which works in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. It is meant to profit us all. It didn't say God gave everyone the same exact gift. And that's why we all have to find out what it is and use it. I believe that one of the greatest hindrances that is hurting us is that sometimes people think that the pastor should be doing it all, and he can't. In fact, he needs people to pray for him. There's this system that I just have a hard time sometimes understanding where everyone, I believe partly it is from the Romans, where we set the stage up and we look at these people as opposed to when we gather around and minister and fellowship and understand what we all bring to the table. Because what happens is sometimes, and I always have problems with it, and somebody might get upset with me, I never liked the big chairs and stuff like that, because for some reason it gives this appearance of superiority. And it sets people apart. When in truth, we all need one another. And that is something that it causes us. Yes, there's leaders, because we know he gave some to be apostles and he gave some to be prophets for the building of the church. But the truth is, those are functions and never was intended to be our names. Sometimes we call each other prophet this or pastor that, but the truth is all of us is brother.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those are functions, not titles. But we do that, and sometimes because we live in a society where the titles are so important, no one wants to do something if the title is not big enough. That's why you get some, I see what everybody wants to be the minister. But then, or they want to be the pastor, but really don't want to do the pastor work. They just want to get on the stage and speak. They just want that title, because when people start attacking you and getting attitudes with you, they're like, I don't want that part. Because there is more, when much is given, much is expected as well. But we also have to learn, like I said, to not have a copycat spirit, because God has called us to do so many things. Let's look at Romans 12. Beginning at verse 4. And it reads, "For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office. So we, being many, are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another, having the gifts differently according to the grace that is given to us. Whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the profession of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he who teaches on teaching, or he who exhorts on exhortation, or he who gives, let him do it with simplicity, he who rules with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. You have anyone have another?
Yes. Just as our bodies have many parts, and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly.
Amen. So as we see, there is the different members, different parts of the body with the same Lord. We use this, and always I say is the sad part is when you're not using these gifts, you're stealing, because these gifts, as we just read, are for the body. They're for the body. So if you have the gift of showing a spirit of love, or well, we all show love, but a nourishing spirit, or if you have the spirit of giving, or you have certain things, but you hold it back, and I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that. What you do is you cripple the body. You cripple the body because what happens is sometimes we just want people to do stuff because we needed to get it done. But what happens is some of the greatest people that sits in the congregation are doing things that they are not supposed to be doing. And some of it is just because out of fear. Some of it is because they don't believe. This is why nourishing is important. Because sometimes people can get fearful. And if you don't have somebody who has that nourishing spirit, say you can do it. And encouraging them. That's why the Bible said those who exhort, exhort. That's needed in our community. That's needed in the body of Christ. One of the things, if you look at us, especially, we're called not to be to each other. Jesus didn't come just to save us. He came to save, seek, and save those who are lost. So what he does, he uses his body for that. So we should take our gifts and go and seek and save those who are lost. But how are we going to do it is that's why he gave us the gifts to do it. Because we can't do it not by our power, it's not by our might, it's by his spirit. He's given us the spirit, and that spirit is the grace that comes our gifts. And so when we go out there, we all have different things and we can do different ways. And like I said, sometimes we have people that need that encouragement, especially in our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. You know, some people don't believe they can do anything right. But when you encourage them or you build them up, I tell you the truth, the people of God should be the most powerful people that's walking around. Mm-hmm. Because we have the mind of Christ. See, the world knows certain things that they came from a God. And if you know you came from a God, you have the mind of a God. And people don't, why do you think we're the only ones that can change? A dog will only be a dog. A cat will only be a cat. But a human, even though he's a human, he can make decisions. He can come to a point in his life and say, no, I need to stop that. I need to make a change. A lion can't say, you know what, I need to make a change. I'm going to be a giraffe. I need to get it together. I'm not going to eat, any humans or anybody that come through. He's not going to say that. His instinct is going to kick in. That's why when you see people who get those animals and be swearing that they're not going to turn on them, and then they have them in their house, and one day something goes wrong, and they turn. People be at the circus, and all of a sudden they look, and the ringleader, he tripped, and then the animal saw that it was something that triggered him. It was, I forgot who it was, those famous, the two famous ones that they were CONQUERORS.
Yes.
Yeah, all those years they was doing it. And then something happened, and those lions went to work. Because that's who they are. God has given us the ability to be creative, to build. And I believe that our talents, we don't tap into it. People should look at us and say, wow, who is that God that they know? And I believe that. Let's go to Matthew 5, starting at 14. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick. And it gives light unto all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Believers are salt. Believers are light. We have the ability, we have the gifts. There's a difference between being bold and arrogant. Believers should be bold. We should be so bold that when people see it and say, man, those dudes is bad. Yeah, well, we follow Jesus Christ. We are some bad dudes. But we don't have that. Somehow we think being humble means like a doormat or something. Jesus was humble, but he was far from a doormat. When he walked in there and saw what they was doing in his Father's house, he got, my house, it will not be a den of thieves. And he would go and tell the Pharisees when they was trying to trick him. And they say, who you are, I am who I am. They knew what that meant. That's why they went to get the stones. Because when he said, I am that I am, when we go to the Old Testament, when they asked Moses, who should you say sent them? He said, I am. Mm-hmm. So they knew what he was talking about when he said, I am that I am. But I just want us to know, don't get to the end of your life. Don't get to a point where you can't do the things that you could, and then you look back and wonder and say, what would have happened if I at least tried? Mm-hmm. What could I, because let me tell you something. People try to play it safe and you still go through problems.
True.
You still going to go through bill problems. You still going, we try our best to worry about staying healthy, but you're still going to get sick and you're still going to die. You're still going to die. So what do you have to lose by going to be the best that you can be and using your God-given gifts to glorify God and to help others? And God's going to ask you, I gave it to you. You had so much. And you was like, I didn't know yet you did. And I expected much more from you. Let's look at Luke 12:48. Somebody got it already?
Yes.
All right, can you read it?
Luke 12:48. But someone who does not know and then does something wrong will be punished only lightly. When someone has been given much, much will be required in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, even more will be required.
Much has been given to many of you. And what's going to happen, you never used it. Some of you have been through so many things and God has pulled you out. He's pulled you out so that you can tell people how good He's been. And I just tell them, show them. Like I said, sometimes people think that if you walk with a boldness, you're being arrogant. But I believe this. When you know who you are in Christ, there is a boldness.
Mm-hmm.
There is a sense of, I just know who my Father is. I'm not arrogant. I know who I am. And myself, I got a whole bunch of issues. But I also know who I am in Christ. And I'm going to be the best that I can for Christ. So brothers and sisters, don't steal God's glory by not using your gifts. Use them. Be the best God has given you to be. Shine your light and let your gifts bring glory to God. Amen.
Amen.